Hey everyone, I'm Rather Coherent, and today I'm going to be trying to make a Joe Diamond deck that specializes in being a support role and healing its team. I don't know if I'm going to be going Flex or Primary Clover yet, but either way, I'm probably going to be going for a big hand deck. The reason why is because bonus actions make healing a lot better. If you have more actions than the game expects you to, you're better able to afford the time to spend them on healing. I've shown that concept off in the Joe Diamond and Dexter decks that are both making use of Leo and Haste to find the time to heal. So I think going big hand is really helpful. It's going to let us run Farsights and play these soothing melodies as fast actions. Dream Enhancing Serum is a really conflicting card for big hand decks that actually want to be big hand decks and not just Seekers without a hand size limit. The reason is because it takes up an Arcane slot and competes with your second Farsight. Typically, running 2 Farsights can be pretty hard to afford the economy for, but as I'm playing Joe Diamond, it probably wouldn't be an issue. I'll need to use some of my Farsights to draw cards anyways, and all these events are going to be zero-cost events. Likewise, I have payoff cards like Soothing Melody that don't need money. So I think the second Farsight is really strong, and I don't want to be using a Dream Enhancing Serum in this Joe Diamond deck, which hard locks me into going for Laboratory Assistant as the only other way to increase my hand size. Let's quickly finish off our Hunch deck. We're going to want draw events for that. The immediate ones that come to mind are Preposterous Sketches, No Stone Unturned at level 0. These will both cost nothing when I play them in the Hunch deck, and help me draw cards towards getting online. Now previously when I've tried to make Joe decks, I've put in Glimpse the Unthinkable level 1 in the Hunch deck, but I hate that so much that I'm going to look for literally anything else I could be doing with it. And the problem is that I really want it to draw a card, and Glimpse the Unthinkable level 1 is really the only thing doing that. Anything else is going to be something generally useful like Burning the Midnight Oil, but it's not going to help me with this. So I'm going to begrudgingly accept this for the time being and move on with my life. Next, we need a big pile of cards that are payoffs for Farsight, not just Hallowed Mirror. Burning the Midnight Oil is a great example of this. Extensive Research is another massive payoff card for a Farsight deck. You use your big hand to enable the Farsights, then you use them to play the Extensive Research as a fast action. It's downright gross. Seeking Answers level 1, or level 2 rather, is another great card with Farsight. We're making more of a full deck at this point, but oh well. And all of these are going in the Hunch list, but those first 10 draw cards are the only ones I actually want in the Hunch deck. We haven't finished off our economy though. We've only added some really good payoffs, so let's put some more economy cards into the deck. Crack the Case is so good that even though I don't actually have any benefit from Farsight with this, unlike an Emergency Cache, I will be running Crack the Case. That could be a late game upgrade to turn that into Emergency Cache level 2 because it's better with Farsight by a lot. But for now, that's fine. We still have 17 cards to go because we're Joe Diamond. So right now, I've just realized we haven't put any preference in the deck towards role. We aren't Fighter or Flex or Clover at all. All we have is Drawl and Economy and Farsights and Hallowed Mirror. We tilted ourselves pretty hard towards Clover, or at least Flex with Extensive Researches and Seeking Answers. It's really hard for me to pretend that Occult Lexicon level 3 isn't absolutely insane with 2 copies of Farsight. And I think with the 2 clue finding events we've already got, I'm willing to just be straight Clover with Occult Lexicon as just my entirety of damage contribution, which is more than enough for a third character most of the time. I could throw in the Ancient Stones that deals damage here. That would give me a lot more damage. But at the point where I have that kind of damage in the late game and not in the early game, my team is not going to need the damage. They're getting by without it. So when I add this, it'll just be damage we didn't need most of the time. I think right now I just want to put in a Practice Makes Perfect setup and some basic ally assets to pump my book, which means I'm going to want Miskatonic Funding before I do anything else. Come back to level 0, grab Kirby and Milan. Is Kirby actually a Miskatonic ally? I don't know. Oh my god, he is. I haven't built a deck with Kirby and Miskatonic Funding yet, so I didn't know for sure. After that, we want Practice Makes Perfect. And unfortunately, we get a lot less out of this than we could as Joe Diamond, because we could take Vicious Blow and Overpower and build a Flex character, but I just don't think Joe Diamond is better as a Flex character. It's really hard for me to see that. And actually, I think you can build a Joe Diamond deck that meaningfully stays roughly the same level with this Ancient Stones. Roughly the same level of offensive output, I mean. Because early game, you're not going to have these Farsights, and you don't really have super meaningful mandatory hand item slots. So I think what you can do is early game, before you're using Farsights with your Occult Lexicons and your Ancient Stones, you can just run the full practice makes perfect level 0 setup with a couple of weapons instead of all this experience stuff that you're getting later on. So let's see if we can do all of that. But this is going to be my endgame damage output setup. I'm not going to be using guns when we get to the end. This is just going to be a really janky skill card that's a perception or an overpower that doesn't draw anything. I only have +2 to my book right now. A final book score of 6 is kind of trash, and I've used up all my hand slots. So I'm going to go ahead and throw in one of the tarots. I don't remember what they're called for Seeker ever. It's not the World. That's the one where you redraw. Death. There we go. I'll take a 1 of Death to fill out my odd card count. We'll find it quick enough. I'd like to not pay for it, but it's fine. And looking at the economy, we're at Burning, Crack. That's it. Okay, I'll go ahead and run Stand Together as my last card slot. This seems like actually a really strong place for a flex Joe Diamond with healing cards to stand. Its final book score is 7, which is not like ideal. I'd prefer to be at 8, honestly, but 7 is workable. I've got a practice makes perfect setup with deduction, perception, plan of action. It's not a full bells and whistles deck. I could easily burn another 16 experience upgrading these cards, getting Studious, that sort of thing. But this is a core finish deck at 34. Farsight has plenty of targets. It has my entire Hunch deck of draw cards. It has Stand Together, it has Burning the Midnight Oil, it has Extensive Research, and it has Seeking Answers. I think this is really strong. I think this is a Joe Diamond deck I'd be interested in running, and I think this is actually a flex that's tended heavily towards Kluber. It's hard to say it's not flex when I'm running Occult Lexicon specifically to deal more damage. A big part of why I'm doing that is I think this deck's going to be better at level 0 if I have a full practice makes perfect setup instead of these experience cards. So what I've done is I've copied the deck over, I've removed all the experience cards that they had level 0 versions, I replaced it with them. And then the cards I added were Magnifying Glasses and 45 Automatics to make up for the lack of book boost that I'm going to have from Charisma, and to let myself flex fight. I've thrown in Vicious Blows and Overpowers to make my practice makes perfect a flex setup that really helps me do either role. And I've also just thrown in shortcuts because it's a universally good card. But there's a problem with the deck right now, and it's the Hunch deck. Right now, since I cut 4 cards that draw, I have to put 4 other cards in my Hunch deck. Shortcut is universally good, so it's easy to throw in there. There's 2 of them. But Crack the Case and Extensive Research really can't be in there, which means my Burning the Midnight Oil is now a 1 in 11 or 2 in 11 chance to be drawn, and the only economy I'm consistently hitting is this Stand Together. I feel like I really need to cut something here to put in Emergency Cash. I feel like that's actually mandatory, and it can't be a card that's in the Hunch deck, and then nothing else feels optional in this entire list. I think what it is, it's actually the Magnifying Glass. That feels really, really weird and bad to cut. However, since this is the flex Kluber, it's not my job to get all the clues. I can just be, dealing with the 3 and 2 Shroud locations. We can have the primary Kluber go crack the high Shroud locations. And eventually I'll be able to play an Extensive Research for 2 clues through any Shroud location to help with that. So I think this is what I would do as my starter deck for the Joe Diamond deck. This is how I would start it off and build up to that point where I'm really a powerful healer. It does occur to me, though, very specifically, that Medical Student is actually a really good card in Joe Diamond. You're going to really appreciate everything this does just because of your own vulnerability to the Mythos deck, and it helps me fulfill my role as the support healer in the early game. But again, what the hell do I cut for it? I honestly think it's the Overpower. I'm not fully committed to that, but I think it's the Overpower. My events feel really locked into me. I don't feel like I have the ability to cut them. I can accept that my practice makes perfect is worse at fighting and just roll with that. It'll be fine. Or I can be a worse healer. That's the alternative. Because I'm Joe Diamond and so inherently vulnerable, though, I think I really want the Medical Student. If I had different defensive stats, maybe I would cut the Medical Student instead of the Overpowers, but I do think I'd cut the Overpower for Joe Diamond. And that's more okay for Joe than it would be for a primary fighter, for the exact same reason that I don't need to have great book scores in Scenario 1. The primary fighter can do most of the job for killing the big boss enemy. When I have to help with the huge enemy, I can use Occult Lexicon to avoid taking the test when I do. As the flex fighter, most of my job is running off to deal with a cultist that the main fighter doesn't have time to deal with. I actually really like this. I think this is a really, really solid starting point for Joe Diamond. And it's going to build into this, which actually looks really grossly strong. It looks unambiguously better than the combo deck to me. which is a really good sign. I mean, it lives in a really broken place, though, right? It's a practice makes perfect deck, running all the Seeker draw. It's using Farsights on Hallowed Mirrors and Occult Lexicons with Ancient Stones in play. This deck is really just like a fucking case study on all the broken shit that Seeker can do all at the same time, huh? Not all of it. There's too much of it to really fit it in one deck, but yeah, that is what this deck is. I do like it, though. I really, really like this Joe deck as a flex healer deck. I think that even though its late game version doesn't make any use of his fist, it does make use of his fist getting here. And in the late game, when you're not using your fist score anymore, you're still giving that offensive output that your team needs from you. You've just found a better way to do it. I don't think Joe Diamond is in any way an optimized Seeker, but I feel pretty happy with this list. I'm not convinced it's the best way to build Joe Diamond, but I'm pretty convinced if it isn't, it's not that much weaker than it, because this feels really, really strong at a basic fundamental level. Draw through your deck quickly, get bonus actions, find clues, deal damage without taking a test. And at level 0, unfortunately, you will have to be taking the test, but you're still doing largely the same thing. Anyways, that's it for the Joe Diamond deck tech. Later today, I'll be coming out with the Daisy Walker healer deck tech. So that's it for now. I've been Rather Incoherent. I hope you found the video interesting and enlightening as to how I make my decks and how I think about them. And also as a compelling case for Joe Diamond just being like a good healer. And I think the fact that Joe Diamond is a good healer, that he can abuse Hallowed Mirror like this and play a support role, intrinsically sort of makes him a third wheel character that wants to play flex, which plays to his stat line really well, at least in the early game. And if I wanted to do something that was more fun and less broken, I could cut this stuff for Michael Lee as I have a more experienced deck that actually used all my stats. But that just feels so much worse. I spend more experience and more card slots doing the same thing to a lesser degree. I don't want to get into it. And it also really helps, something I didn't realize initially with Joe Diamond doing this. Miskatonic funding on Joe is scary as hell with his 2 brain and 6 sanity. So playing a healer Joe makes Miskatonic feel so much safer, and I really like that. I just really like the whole deck. It feels smooth. It's a really unintuitive thing where you grow from flexing with your fist stat to just flexing with broken Seeker cards. But I like decks that evolve in that way. I like decks where you start off doing one thing and meaningfully grow into another one, and you don't just linearly get better over and over and over again like Mystics do. I'm rambling. I've been Rather Incoherent. I hope you enjoyed the video. So I was going to end it like a minute ago, so let's do that now. If you like this video, then subscribe for more content just like this. I'll be uploading a Daisy deck tech later today, where I'm doing the exact same thing, building it live and trying to see how she works as a healer. And I'm doing it again, ending the video now, for real this time.